There she was, in the background of her friend's live stream, wrapped in the arms of a man who wasn't me. The man everyone at our office called the ugliest person in tech. The man I'd defended countless times in board meetings. The man I trusted with my company's future. My hands trembled as I replayed the Instagram live stream for the 15th time that night. Each replay revealed new details that made my stomach turn. Sarah's familiar laugh echoing through my home office speakers, her delicate fingers running through his hair, the golden bracelet I'd given her for our engagement catching the light as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. The timestamp on the live stream burned into my retinas. 2:47 p.m. Bangkok time. The exact moment she was supposed to be in a crucial business meeting, helping her college friend launch a tech startup in South Asia. At least, that's what she told me 3 weeks ago when she asked for a relationship break before our wedding. The signs had been there, of course. Sarah changing her phone's password 2 weeks before her departure. The mysterious late-night work calls that ended abruptly whenever I entered the room. Her sudden interest in learning Hindi through her language app. But love has a way of blinding us to the obvious, doesn't it? "I need this, James," she'd said, those green eyes wide with what I now recognized as carefully crafted manipulation. "To prove to myself I can succeed on my own before I become Mrs. Mitchell. It's just for a few months." I'd agreed because that's what you do when you love someone. You support their dreams, their need for growth. I'd even helped her pack, drove her to the airport, kissed her goodbye. "Find what you're looking for?" I told her, not realizing she'd already found it in Adrian Kumar, my chief technology officer of 10 years. Adrian was brilliant at coding but socially awkward. The kind of man who avoided eye contact in meetings and stuttered when presenting to clients. Sarah had nicknamed him the ugly duckling of tech at office parties. A joke I now regretted never stopping. He was the last person anyone would suspect of having an affair with someone like Sarah, which made the betrayal even more bitter. The live stream was just the beginning. I couldn't confront her immediately. She was supposedly in Bangkok after all. So I did what any rational person would do. I hired Marcus Chen, a private investigator recommended by my lawyer. "I need to know everything," I told Marcus during our first meeting in a quiet coffee shop downtown. "Not just about the affair, but about what they're really doing in South Asia." Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes the truth is worse than we imagine, Mr. Mitchell. Are you sure you want to go down this road?" 3 days later, Marcus contacted me with his first report. What he'd discovered made my blood run cold. Sarah and Adrian weren't in Bangkok. They weren't even in Thailand. They were in Singapore, and the startup story was a complete fabrication. "There's more," Marcus said, his voice grave. "Much more. But you might want to sit down for this." What he told me next changed everything. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about betrayal on a level I couldn't have imagined. About corporate espionage, hidden accounts, and plans that would destroy not just my heart, but everything I'd worked for. I spent the next week in a daze, going through the motions at work while my private world crumbled. Every night, I'd come home to our empty house, look at the wedding plans still scattered across the dining room table, and feel like I was living in some bizarre alternate reality. Then came the video call that nearly broke me. Sarah called one evening, her face glowing with what I now recognized as guilt rather than joy. "James, darling, everything's going so well here. The startup is really taking off. We might need to stay a few more weeks." I watched her lie to my face, noticed Adrian's suit jacket hanging in the background, saw the room service cart with 2 plates in the corner of the frame, and I made a decision. "Take all the time you need," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Actually, I've been thinking about the wedding. Maybe we should postpone it? Give you time to really focus on this opportunity." The relief on her face was painful to watch. "Oh, James, you're so understanding. Yes, maybe a small postponement would be good. Just until everything here is settled." As soon as the call ended, I started making plans of my own. First, I quietly canceled the wedding vendor's venue, everything. Then I called both our families and closest friends, telling them I needed their help with a surprise for Sarah's return. She's done so well with this business venture. I told them, the lies tasting bitter on my tongue. I want to throw her a huge welcome home party. But it has to be a complete surprise. Everyone bought it. Why wouldn't they? Sarah and I had been the perfect couple, the success story everyone pointed to. She was the beautiful marketing genius who'd helped take Mitchell Technologies from a startup to a major player in the industry. I was the dedicated CEO who'd built something from nothing. Together, we were unstoppable. Or so everyone thought. The day Sarah was due to return, I had our house filled with people, both our families, close friends, key employees from the company. Everyone who had ever believed in us as a couple. Everyone who deserved to know the truth. Sarah walked in, designer suitcase in hand, her face lighting up at the sight of all the people gathered to welcome her home. James? What's all this? I stepped forward, playing the role of devoted fiancé one last time. Welcome home, darling. We're all so proud of your success in Asia. I thought we should celebrate. She hugged me, and I felt her tension. Her eyes darted around the room, probably looking for Adrian, probably wondering if he'd been invited, probably trying to figure out if I knew. Then I saw him walk in Adrian Kumar, my trusted CTO, the man who'd betrayed everything we'd built together. He froze for just a moment when he saw the crowd, but quickly composed himself, nodding professionally in my direction. The party started normally enough. People mingled, congratulated Sarah on her supposed business success, asked for stories about Asia. I watched her spin lies with practiced ease, describing meetings that never happened, deals that didn't exist, a company that was pure fiction. Then I stood up, tapping my glass for attention. I'd like to propose a game, I announced. Something fun to welcome Sarah home. I call it the test of honesty. Sarah's smile flickered. A game? Yes, I continued, pulling out my phone. I've downloaded this app. It's supposed to be like a lie detector. Just for fun, of course. Who wants to go first? The game started innocently enough. Everyone downloaded the lie detector app I'd chosen, more amused than serious about its accuracy. Sarah sat in the center of our living room, perched on the edge of the leather armchair I'd bought for her last birthday, her perfect smile never wavering. Let's start with something light, I suggested, maintaining my role as the gracious host. Who wants to go first? My cousin Tom, always the life of the party, volunteered. Hit me with your best shot. Have you ever eaten someone else's lunch from the office fridge? I asked. The app flashed red immediately as Tom answered, Never. Everyone burst out laughing as he sheepishly admitted to stealing Karen from accounting's famous lasagna last Christmas. A few more rounds went by. People confessed to calling in sick to go to baseball games, regifting unwanted Christmas presents, and other harmless sins. The atmosphere was light, celebratory. Sarah even seemed to relax, joining in the laughter as others got caught in their little white lies. Then my sister Rachel, who'd been watching Sarah intently all evening, spoke up. I have a question. She paused, swirling her wine glass deliberately. Have you ever cheated on your partner? The room grew quiet. Sarah's laugh rang out, too loud, too confident. Of course not. What kind of question is that? We all watched as the app processed her response. The screen flashed red. Lies detected. Oh, come on, Sarah scoffed, but I noticed her fingers tightening around her glass. Everyone knows these apps aren't real lie detectors. You're right, I agreed, reaching for my phone. Maybe we should fact-check it. I pulled up the Instagram live stream video I'd saved. This is from your friend Jessica's broadcast 3 weeks ago. She was showing off her new apartment in Bangkok, but the interesting part happens in the background. The color drained from Sarah's face as I connected my phone to our smart TV. Adrian, standing by the fireplace, suddenly became very interested in his shoes. The video played. Jessica's voice chatted about her view of the city, but behind her, through her open bedroom door, we could clearly see Sarah and Adrian in an intimate embrace. The golden bracelet on her wrist, my engagement gift to her, caught the light as she ran her fingers through his hair. That could be anyone, Sarah stammered, but her voice had lost its confidence. The video's blurry, and Jessica's apartment is dark. You're wearing the bracelet I gave you, I pointed out calmly. The one you're wearing right now. The room erupted in whispers. Sarah's mother covered her mouth with her hand. Adrian's face had gone from pale to ashen. If you want clearer evidence, I continued, picking up my tablet, maybe we should look at these. I turned to Adrian. You really should be more careful about logging out of your Apple ID on shared devices. Adrian, especially in the office. His eyes widened with recognition. Last month, he'd borrowed my tablet during a board meeting when his laptop crashed. He'd needed to access some cloud files, and I'd thought nothing of it at the time. James, he started, but I held up my hand. Let's see. Here's your iMessage chat history with Sarah. Quite extensive for two people who barely spoke at the office. Isn't it? Oh, and look, these timestamps match all those late-night emergency coding sessions you said you needed to work on. Sarah jumped to her feet. You had no right to access his private messages. Actually, I had every right. It was my company tablet, logged into our corporate network. But if you're concerned about privacy, maybe we should talk about the company information you've both been sharing with our competitors. That got everyone's attention. Adrian finally spoke up, his voice strained. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I pulled up another file. Here's a series of messages discussing how to copy our new security protocol. And here's Sarah suggesting which competitors might be interested in buying it. James, please, Sarah pleaded, looking around the room desperately. You're making something out of nothing. This is hardly worth causing such a scene. That's when Kevin, our head of sales, stepped forward. He'd been unusually quiet all evening, nursing his whiskey in the corner. I can't stay quiet anymore. All eyes turned to him. Kevin looked at Sarah, then at Adrian, his face twisted with guilt. I should have said something sooner, James. I'm so sorry. What are you talking about? Sarah snapped, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Kevin took a deep breath. Remember the holiday party last month? When I got really drunk and started crying in James's office. He turned to me. I wasn't just emotional from the alcohol. I was crying because I couldn't handle the guilt anymore. The room was dead silent now. Even the ice in people's glasses seemed afraid to clink. I'd seen them together, Kevin continued. Not just once. They had a regular meeting spot, that little cafe on 7th Street, the one with the private booths in the back. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m., like clockwork. I told myself it wasn't my business, that maybe they were just working on a project together. Sarah's face had gone from pale to crimson. You're drunk now, Kevin. You don't know what you're talking about. I wish I was drunk, Kevin replied. And I wish that's all I knew about. But there's more, isn't there? Adrian? Want to tell everyone about the offshore accounts? Or should I? Adrian's professional demeanor finally cracked. Shut up, Kevin. But Kevin wasn't finished. His words came out in a rush now, like he couldn't hold them back anymore. They weren't just having an affair. They were stealing from the company. Small amounts at first, hidden in fake vendor contracts. Then bigger sums disguised as consulting fees. I found out because one of the fake companies used my old address. I guess they thought I'd moved and wouldn't notice the mail. The revelations hit the room like bombs. Sarah's father, a retired judge, stood up abruptly. Sarah Catherine Walsh, you tell me right now that this isn't true. Sarah looked around the room wildly, like a cornered animal. Her eyes landed on Adrian, silently pleading for help, but he was too busy staring at the text messages still displayed on the TV screen. Messages that detailed exactly how they'd planned to blame Kevin if their scheme was ever discovered. Do you know what really kills me? I said into the heavy silence. It's not just the affair or even the theft. It's that Tuesday morning when you asked to borrow my laptop to check your email. Remember? You said yours wasn't working. I didn't think anything of it then, but now I know that's when you accessed our client database. Isn't it? More whispers erupted around the room. Sarah's mother was openly crying now. Adrian had moved closer to the door, but my brother casually stepped into his path, arms crossed. Kevin drained his whiskey and set the glass down hard. Tell them about Moscow, Sarah. Tell them what really happened on that business trip last spring. Sarah's head snapped up. How do you know about Moscow? Because I was there, Kevin said quietly. That vendor meeting you said you were attending? I was having dinner in the same restaurant. I saw you meet with Anton Petrov, our biggest competitor's CEO. I saw you hand him a USB drive. I saw everything. The room exploded in chaos. Sarah's father started shouting about disgrace to the family name. Adrian finally found his voice, trying to spin some explanation about market research. Two board members who'd been invited started making urgent phone calls in the corner. But it was my sister Rachel's voice that cut through the noise. There's something else, isn't there, Kevin? Something worse. Kevin looked at me apologetically. The real reason I got drunk and confessed that night, I'd overheard them planning their next step. They weren't just selling company secrets. They were planning to take everything, client lists, patents, everything, to start their own company. With our competitors' backing. Sarah finally broke. Fine. Yes. We had plans. Big plans. Because she jabbed a finger at me. You were always so focused on playing it safe, on being the perfect CEO with your perfect ethics and your perfect reputation. Do you know how much money we could have made? How much bigger we could have been? We? I asked quietly. Or you and Adrian? She faltered. And in that moment, I saw the truth in her eyes. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd planned to marry, had never really existed. In her place stood a stranger who'd been playing a role all along. The party had become a tribunal, with Sarah and Adrian at its center. But as I watched my former fiancée try to defend her actions, watched my trusted CTO's facade crumble under the weight of evidence, I realized this was just the beginning. Because my old friend Michael, who'd been silently watching everything unfold, had caught my eye from across the room, and the slight shake of his head told me he had even more to share. Michael's revelation hung in the air like smoke. The party had devolved into small clusters of shocked guests, their whispers filling our living room with a low, anxious hum. Sarah stood in the center, her designer dress now wrinkled from her nervous fidgeting, while Adrian hovered nearby, his usual awkwardness replaced by barely concealed panic. Before we hear what Michael has to say, I announced, my voice cutting through the murmurs. There's something else I'd like to address. I turned to Sarah, maintaining the calm demeanor that was clearly unnerving her. Remember our trip to Bali last year? You were so adamant about not going to the beach. Sarah's hand unconsciously moved to her right hip. I got sunburned easily. You know that. Funny thing about that, I continued. Lauren from the spa mentioned seeing you there last month. Said you were wearing quite a revealing bikini. I paused, letting the implication sink in. So, Sarah, if I'm wrong about everything, why don't you show everyone that you don't have a tattoo with Adrian's name on it? The room went deadly silent. Even the ice in people's glasses stopped clinking. Sarah's face, already pale, went completely white. This is ridiculous, she stammered. I don't have to prove anything to you. You're right, you don't. I agreed. Just like Adrian doesn't have to prove he doesn't have your name tattooed on his chest. Right over his heart, isn't it? Adrian's hand instinctively went to his chest, and I knew I had them. The matching tattoos had been a wild guess, based on a glimpse of black ink I'd caught when Adrian was changing shirts at the company gym. But their reactions confirmed everything. You don't know what you're talking about, Adrian muttered, but the slight tremor in his voice betrayed him. That's when the front door opened. Claire Kumar walked in, her heels clicking purposefully on our hardwood floors. Adrian's wife of 12 years, mother of his 2 children, and as I'd recently learned, a forensic accountant who'd been doing some investigating of her own. Actually, Claire said, her voice razor-sharp, he knows exactly what he's talking about. She surveyed the room, her eyes lingering on Sarah's expensive jewelry. Nice earrings, Sarah. Cartier's new collection, aren't they? The same ones my husband bought 2 weeks ago in Singapore. Sarah's hand flew to her ear, where the diamonds caught the light. The same earrings she'd claimed were just good costume jewelry when she'd worn them to the office last week. That's why you came to all our family barbecues. isn't it? Claire continued, pulling papers from her designer briefcase. All those Sundays you spent playing with our children, pretending to be the perfect family friend, while you were sleeping with their father. Sarah tried to interrupt, but Claire wasn't finished. She spread bank statements across our coffee table, her movements precise and deliberate. Here's the receipt for those earrings, $10,000. Quite generous for a man who told me we couldn't afford to fix our daughter's braces this year. She laid out more papers. And here's the hotel bills from Singapore, the spa treatments, the private yacht rental, all paid for with money that was supposed to be for our children's college fund. Adrian finally found his voice. Claire, I can explain. Explain what? Claire's laugh was bitter. Explain how you've been transferring money to offshore accounts for months? How you bought a condo in Singapore under a fake company name? Or maybe you'd like to explain these. She pulled out her phone and projected photos onto our TV screen. They showed Sarah at our family events, birthday parties, Christmas celebrations, summer barbecues. In each photo, she was close to Adrian, their body language obvious now that we knew what to look for. But it was the background details that were damning. Sarah wearing jewelry that matched Claire's bank statements. Adrian's hand casually resting where we now knew his tattoo was. Our daughter Emma adored you, Claire said to Sarah, her voice cracking slightly. She asked for your help with her science project last month. Remember? Wanted to be just like Aunt Sarah when she grew up. Was that part of your plan too? Using my children to maintain your cover. Sarah at least had the decency to look ashamed. The children were never part of this. Don't you dare talk about my children. Claire's composure finally cracked. You sat at my table, ate the meals I cooked, hugged my kids, all while planning to destroy their family. The room erupted in chaos. Sarah's mother started sobbing again, while her father demanded she explain herself. Adrian tried to approach Claire, but her icy glare stopped him in his tracks. Want to know the worst part? Claire addressed the room at large. I found their plans. The real reason they needed that Singapore condo. She pulled out one final document. They were planning to transfer there permanently. Adrian was going to claim his mother was sick, that he needed to care for her. Sarah would follow a month later, supposedly for a business expansion. They had it all worked out. I watched as Sarah's carefully constructed world crumbled around her. The confident, successful woman who'd walked into our house an hour ago was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Those barbecues, Claire continued, her voice thick with emotion. All those times you played with Emma and Josh in our pool, helped them with their homework. You were just establishing your cover story, weren't you? Making sure everyone would say what a close family friend you were, how much you cared about the children. So when you and Adrian finally ran away together, it would seem natural that you both ended up in the same place. Sarah tried to speak, but Claire cut her off. 2 weeks ago, Emma asked if we could invite Aunt Sarah to her piano recital. She wanted to play the piece you helped her practice. How do you think she'll feel when she learns the truth? The mention of Emma, Adrian and Claire's talented 12-year-old daughter seemed to hit Sarah harder than any of the financial evidence. She sank onto our couch, her perfect facade finally cracking. But Claire wasn't finished. She turned to her husband, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. Remember last month when Josh had his asthma attack? When I couldn't reach you for hours because you were in a critical meeting? She pulled up another bank statement. You were at the Ritz-Carlton with her, weren't you? Spending our son's medical emergency fund on champagne and caviar while I sat with him in the ER. Adrian's face crumpled. Claire, please. Please what? She threw another stack of papers on the table. Please don't tell everyone how you emptied our children's college accounts. Please don't mention the credit cards you opened in my name. Please don't show them the messages where you and Sarah laughed about how naive and trusting your wife was. The room had gone completely still. Even Sarah's mother had stopped crying, watching the scene unfold with horror. Or maybe, Claire's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow cut through the silence more sharply than any shout. You'd like me to share the messages where you two discussed how you'd explain to our children why Daddy was moving to Singapore with their beloved Aunt Sarah, instead of staying with their mother? That was when Michael, who'd been watching everything with growing disgust, finally stepped forward. "There's more," he said quietly. "So much more. And it's worse than anyone here imagines." To my surprise, it was Sarah who reacted most strongly to Michael's words. "Michael, don't you dare dash." But Michael just smiled grimly. "What's wrong, Sarah? Worried about what I might know about your trips to Moscow? Or maybe it's about what really happened to that missing prototype from the R&D lab." The tension in the room, already thick enough to cut with a knife, ratcheted up another notch. Because Michael, my quiet, unassuming head of security, had just hinted at something that transformed this from a story of infidelity and theft into something far more sinister. Sarah and Adrian exchanged a look of pure panic, and I knew we were about to uncover an even darker layer of their deception. Michael cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. The party had become a tribunal of sorts, with our friends and family bearing witness to the unraveling of what everyone had thought was a perfect relationship. James asked me to look into some things after he discovered the live stream. Michael began, his voice gentle but firm. What I found wasn't just about the affair. It was about the life they were planning together, right under all our noses. He pulled out his phone and connected it to our TV. Photos appeared on the screen: Sarah and Adrian viewing a luxury condo in Singapore, meeting with real estate agents, having intimate dinners. Each photo was dated and time-stamped, showing a pattern that stretched back months before Sarah had asked for her relationship break. They weren't just planning a few stolen moments together, Michael explained. They were planning an entire life. The business trip story was just a test run. Sarah's mother gasped as a document appeared on the screen, a lease agreement for a luxury apartment in Singapore's most exclusive district, signed 3 months ago, the same period when Sarah had been excitedly planning our wedding with her. "While you were choosing wedding flowers," I said to Sarah, my voice steady despite the pain, "you were also choosing curtains for your new home with him." "James," Sarah started, but I wasn't finished. "You know what hurts the most?" I pulled out my own phone, showing her a photo. "Remember this house? The one you said would be perfect for our future family." Sarah's face paled as she recognized the beautiful Hamptons beach house she'd fallen in love with last summer. The one she'd described in detail: the garden where our children would play, the kitchen where we'd cook Sunday dinners, the porch where we'd grow old together. "I bought it," I said softly, "last month. Was going to surprise you with the keys at our wedding." The room fell so quiet you could hear the ice melting in abandoned glasses. Sarah's mother began to cry again, but this time, no one moved to comfort her. "All those dreams you shared with me," I continued, "all those plans we made together, they were just a cover story, weren't they? Something to keep me distracted while you planned your real future with Adrian." Claire stepped forward then, holding a manila envelope. "Speaking of real futures," she said, walking to Adrian, "here are the divorce papers. I'm asking for full custody of Emma and Josh." Adrian's face crumpled. "Claire, please, the children dash." "The children?" Claire's voice cracked. "The children who keep asking why Daddy misses their school events? Who wonder why he can't attend their recitals? While you were playing happy family with Sarah at our barbecues, our real family was falling apart." She turned to Sarah. "They loved you, you know. Emma especially. Do you remember last month when she showed you her science project? The one about trust and relationships in nature? Oh, the irony." Sarah sank into a chair, her designer dress wrinkled, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. The confident, successful woman who had walked into our house hours ago was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. "I want you both to understand what you're losing," I said, looking between Sarah and Adrian. "Sarah, that education at Columbia I paid for? The career I helped you build? The family that supported every decision you made?" I gestured to her parents. "It's all gone now." Sarah's father stood up, his voice heavy with disappointment. "We sacrificed everything to give you the best life possible. And this is how you repay our trust." "Daddy," Sarah whispered, but he turned away. Claire walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "The children asked about you this morning, Adrian. I told them you were working late like always." Tomorrow I'll have to tell them the truth, that their father chose another woman over them. That all those times they thought you were working to secure their future, you were actually planning to abandon them. The room watched in heavy silence as Claire placed the divorce papers on the table. I've already moved your things out of the house. Your key won't work. I changed the locks yesterday. The children's therapist says it's better this way. A clean break. Adrian stared at the papers, his hands shaking. Everything he'd built, everything he'd had gone in a single evening. As for you, I said to Sarah, I think it's time you called a cab. Your things will be packed and sent to whatever address you provide. The wedding is obviously cancelled. The house. I paused, looking at the photo of the Hamptons dream home still displayed on my phone. I think I'll sell it. Some dreams aren't meant to come true.